Okay, so you want to own a ship, not a yacht, not a fishing boat, a real one. A container ship the length of 4 football fields, stacked with boxes of sneakers, phones, coffee, and car parts, quietly gliding across the Pacific at 14 miles an hour. From the outside, it looks like the ultimate business. One ship, one voyage, and you're moving hundreds of millions of dollars worth of the world's stuff. No customers yelling at you, no storefront rent, just steel, ocean, and cargo. Here's the number that gets people hooked. Global shipping moves over 80% of everything humans buy and trade. Your shoes, your laptop, your coffee beans, they almost all touched a ship at some point. Altogether, it's an industry worth more than $500 billion a year. But here's the problem. This industry has bankrupted empires, sunk fortunes overnight, and turned some of the smartest tycoons on Earth into cautionary tales. So what does it actually take to own a piece of this? And why does an industry, this massive, this essential, so often make almost no profit at all? Let's start from zero. Think of global trade like a giant supermarket that spans the entire planet. Factories in Vietnam make your sneakers. Farms in Brazil grow your coffee. Chip plants in Taiwan build the brain of your phone. None of that matters if it can't get to your doorstep. Shipping is the delivery truck for the entire human race. Except instead of a truck, imagine a floating parking garage the size of a skyscraper laid on its side, carrying 20,000 metal boxes, each one a self-contained little warehouse. That's a container ship, and the business model, at its core, is almost embarrassingly simple. You own the ship. Someone pays you to put their cargo in a box. You carry that box from port A to port B. You get paid per box. It's a taxi. Except instead of people, you're driving refrigerators, blenders, or 5,000 copies of the same t-shirt. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because a shipping company doesn't just make money one way. The first revenue stream is the obvious one. Freight rates, the price per container, which can swing from $1,200 to over $10,000, depending on demand. The second is chartering, renting your ship out to other companies the way you'd rent out an apartment, instead of living in it yourself. The third is logistics services, warehousing, customs, trucking on the other end, which is where companies like Maersk have quietly built entire empires beyond just the ocean voyage. But here's the problem. Running a ship is staggeringly expensive. A single new container ship can cost over $150 million. Fuel alone can run $40,000 a day. Port fees, crew salaries, insurance, maintenance. A modern vessel needs a small army just to keep moving. Think of it like owning a restaurant, except the restaurant is 100,000 tons of steel. It never stops running, and if you park it for even a day, you're still bleeding cash. And this is where the real economics of shipping start to reveal themselves. You'd think an industry this essential would have great profit margins. It doesn't. In a normal year, shipping companies often operate on margins of just 3 to 7%. Thinner than a grocery store. Why? Because shipping is what economists call a commodity business. Nobody cares whose ship their sneakers arrived on. There's no brand loyalty to a shipping line the way there is to an iPhone. So companies can't charge a premium. They compete almost entirely on price. That means the industry lives and dies by one brutal cycle: supply versus demand, magnified across an ocean. Here's where things become interesting. When the global economy is booming, ships are packed, rates skyrocket, and profits explode. But shipping companies respond to good times by ordering more ships. Except a new ship takes 2 to 3 years to build. So by the time all those new ships hit the water, the boom has often already ended. And now there are too many ships chasing too little cargo. This is called the shipping cycle, and it has destroyed more fortunes than almost any pattern in modern business. Which brings us to our first case study. In 2008, one of the most respected shipping tycoons in the world was a man named John Frederickson, and shipping legend Malcolm McLean's old business and companies just like his were about to get hit by the perfect storm. Global trade collapsed almost overnight during the financial crisis. Freight rates that had been in the tens of thousands of dollars per container fell to almost nothing within months. Some ships were literally anchored empty off the coast of Asia because sailing them cost more than the cargo they'd carry was worth. An entire fleet, worth billions, sitting idle in the ocean, quietly rusting, while owners hemorrhaged money every single day. That's the terrifying part of this business. It's not just competitive, it's cyclical, brutal, and completely tied to the health of the entire global economy. You're not just betting on your company, you're betting on humanity buying stuff. But that's only half the story, because sometimes the crisis works in reverse. In 2021, the opposite happened. COVID lockdowns triggered a shopping boom the world had never seen. Everyone stuck at home started buying furniture, treadmills, and monitors online. Ports became jammed, ships got stuck waiting weeks outside harbors, and suddenly there weren't enough containers on Earth to meet demand. Freight rates from China to the US West Coast, which normally sat around $2,000 per container, spiked past $20,000. Some companies, almost overnight, posted the highest profits in the history of the shipping industry. Maersk alone reported profits profits north of $18 billion that single year, more than the company had earned in the entire previous decade combined. It was the best year shipping had ever seen, and it lasted less than 18 months before rates crashed right back down. That's the pattern. Feast, then famine. Almost never anything in between. Now comes the difficult part, because surviving that cycle requires something most people never think about: scale. The biggest players, Maersk, MSC, CMA, CGM, Costco, don't just own ships. They own ports, terminals, trucking networks, and warehouses. They control the entire supply chain from factory floor to front door. That's how they survive the bad years, by making money on the logistics, even when the ocean freight itself is barely profitable. It's the difference between owning one coffee cart and owning the coffee farm, the roasting plant, the delivery trucks, and the chain of stores. When one part of the business slows down, the rest keeps you afloat. This is why entering the shipping industry today isn't really about buying one ship anymore. It's about building, or buying into, an entire vertical empire, one that costs billions just to assemble. And this changes everything about who can actually compete. Small shipping companies still exist, but the real power in this $500 billion industry sits with a handful of giants who control the choke points of global trade: the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the megaports of Shanghai and Rotterdam. When any one of those choke points closes, even briefly, the entire world feels it. In 2021, a single container ship called the Ever Given got wedged sideways in the Suez Canal for 6 days. That one stuck ship blocked an estimated $9 billion of trade every single day it sat there. 6 days, nearly $60 billion in delayed global commerce, because one 400-meter ship lost control in a crosswind. That's the paradox of this industry. It's invisible until it breaks. And when it breaks, the entire modern world notices instantly. So what does the future actually look like? Automation is creeping into ports, cutting labor costs, but raising the capital required to compete. Environmental regulations are forcing billions of dollars in new investment into cleaner fuel, because shipping alone produces close to 3% of global carbon emissions. And rising geopolitical tension, tariffs, trade wars, blocked shipping lanes, means the safest, most predictable decades of globalization may already be behind us. The next era of shipping won't be won by whoever has the most ships. It'll be won by whoever controls the most infrastructure, the most data, and the most resilience when the next crisis hits. Because in this industry, the crisis is never a matter of if, only when. So let's go back to that ship. Owning it was never really about steel, or fuel, or containers. It was about owning a piece of the invisible machine that decides whether shelves stay stocked, whether factories keep running, whether an entire economy keeps breathing. Global shipping isn't a business that moves boxes. It's the nervous system of civilization itself, quietly running 24 hours a day in international waters no one thinks about, until the day it stops. And that's the real lesson hiding inside this $500 billion industry. The most powerful businesses in the world aren't always the ones you can see. Sometimes they're the ones sailing quietly past you, somewhere over the horizon, carrying everything you own.